All right, Reality Redemption, back for another week. How are you doing, Snow?
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm all right. You know,
Yeah.
it's getting hot around here in Arizona.
It's getting hot in her.
Yeah, so today we have Ken W. Good on from Tyler, Texas, I believe.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. How you doing?
Welcome.
Welcome to the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. I've been traveling for a couple of days, so I just got back like midnight last night. So
Did you go anywhere fun?
no. Well, I was in Corpus Christi at a conference. I was speaking at the conference, so I was just doing work. So, I mean, it was fun. I don't consider that something for fun.
Okay.
So can we start off with it?
Vacation.
Oh, yeah. Nothing super exciting. Huh.
Yeah, it was work related. So.
So yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Well, I'm a really old guy. I'm an attorney. I've been practicing law for 35 years. I specialize in bail law, so I've written articles that have been published across the country on issues relating to what I would call bad bail reform. Maybe we should just now start calling it soft on crime policies that don't work. I've argued cases before the Supreme Court of Texas, the Court of Criminal Appeals, because we have two different high courts. The Court of Criminal Appeals regulates bail issues, so I've argued a couple of cases before them and was blessed to be successful. I'm married to another attorney. She is a staff attorney for a federal magistrate judge, and I have two daughters that are almost grown up. My oldest is self-sufficient and has a job, and my youngest is a junior in college. And I'm on the board of the Professional Ombudsman of Texas. I'm on their legislative committee, so we testify before the legislature on issues that are criminal justice related, what works and what doesn't work. And we have just finished a legislative session in the last week, so we've been very busy.
What happened during that session?
We had major bail reform passed. We had a bill passed 4 years ago, and so we had several bills. One tweaking it, that's SB 9, and that was probably the big bill. SB 40 was just a really small bill that just said public funds can't be used to give to a charitable bail organization to post bonds for people. But then we had a constitutional amendment that passed and will be presented to the voters to extend preventative detention to certain violent offenses or give the court discretion to do that. So then we had several that didn't pass, like illegal alien related or repeat offender related, but those didn't have the votes to pass, so those won't go before the voters.
When you say like the soft on crime, is that Texas?
No, I would say, okay, so here's an example. Prop 47 in California passed, and Prop 47 was to change certain felony crimes to misdemeanor crimes. And the argument was they'll still have to answer for the crimes, but this will enable them to get jobs and et cetera, et cetera. But the soft on crime part of it came in after it passed. In our urban areas, the progressive soft on crime DAs decided we're no longer going to prosecute theft under $950. So if you just rob $950 from a place, they wouldn't prosecute you. And the consequences of that are shoplifting, stores closing because they can't withstand $25,000 a day in shoplifting, rampant crime around the area, and then you have buildings that start telling their employees work from home because it's not safe in this area because nobody's prosecuting these crimes anymore. And then you have commercial buildings, property values drop like rocks. I mean, you got San Francisco buildings selling for a third, 50% of what they were selling for 5 years before. And so you're starting to see DAs that have these soft on crime policies getting defeated. They have a short shelf life because of these things, because they don't work. And so they get elected once, they may get reelected once, but after that they can't win again. You saw that with Gascon. Gascon won, but they tried to recall him twice, and he got 25% of the primary vote this last time, and then got his butt kicked in the general election.
So when you say they're not prosecuting those cases, what do? Do they just say go ahead and shoplift again? I mean, I'm confused. Like, what do? They don't have to do community service.
There's no charges.
Nothing at all. Like zero.
No, they're not arresting them because they won't prosecute them, and so that's the reason why Prop 34, I believe it was on the ballot in November to roll back a lot of Prop 47, and it passed.
Okay, and this is only that. So this is only in California, or this is in Texas?
No, that's in California, but there are examples across the country. Texas has taken the opposite approach. It has strengthened the criminal justice system instead of softened it. And so, but we have our own problem with Houston, which is Harris County, which has embraced some of these policies contrary to what the legislature wants.
Okay.
So Texas is being pretty much proactive to go, not have the same thing happen there as happens in California.
Yes, or in New York or another progressive, New Jersey. Yeah, I would say Texas has gone the opposite direction and enacted what I would call good bail reform, which strengthens accountability. When you have soft on crime policies, that creates backlogs. Backlogs put pressure on prosecutors, DAs to dismiss cases to address the backlogs. And then that's a green light perceived by criminals to commit more crime because there's no consequences.
Okay, that is a valid argument, though.
But well, I have a question too. With this came up like as a topic. I want to say like in the 90s when they started talking about like prison overcrowdings. Is that still a problem? Could that be maybe why they're not doing it either? Is there's just not enough housing for all of this?
Well, I think the prison situation, it depends on where you are. I mean, I think all of the pressure to start these reforms started in California because of prison space, but it wasn't because of it was really because they refused to build additional capacity. And so, there was a lawsuit filed, and there was a 3-judge federal court, a panel appointed, and they put a cap on the prison population in California, not based on, anything other than medical care. We don't think you can provide proper medical care for the people that are currently in your prison based upon you're at 200% of your capacity. So we're going to cap it at 137% of your capacity. And in the interim, they haven't done anything to build additional capacity. So every time they pass a bill to say, we're going to release more criminals, but don't worry, this is not going to cause more crime. Well, it always causes more crime. When you release more criminals, it's going to cause more crime. And so I think what you should realize is what's going on in California and potentially New York is the prison capacity issue is a backdoor way to mandate bad bail reform because they refuse to add additional capacity.
But these facilities would need to have proper medical staffing, though, to handle these prisoners, right?
Yeah, but the reason why California's having problems now is that they were at around 200% of capacity for where they were. If they built additional facilities, then they wouldn't be 200% over capacity. I mean, they wouldn't be having holding 2 times the number of people in the prisons that they were designed for 100% instead of 200%. So if they built additional space and staffed it, they would have the medical staff to provide that because they have the medical staff to provide for X number, but they've got X times 2 in their system.
Can I ask you this because I'm not that sure about the Texas jail system? Does Texas rely mostly on privatized prisons, or is it state prisons?
I would assume.
I think mostly state prisons. I mean, I think there are
in Texas.
There are some maybe, but I don't think so. I mean, not very many. But I would say Texas relies mostly on state facility.
Does Texas allow in their budget to have proper medical facilities at these prisons?
Well, I don't. There's not any medical. I mean, there's not any litigation currently pending in Texas saying that they're not providing proper medical care.
Okay.
Well, because here in Arizona, the majority of our prisons are private, like
Oh, really?
profit prisons. Yeah, they're not the state-run ones. And my theory on that is they did away with the state ones because that way no more pensions to the employees, and the prison here, it's ridiculous what they make. I don't know what they're up to now, but at the time that my ex worked there, it's probably like $12 an hour. Who wants $12 an hour that's a tough job to do for $12 an hour.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot to ask of.
And a lot of our prisons are like the GEO group.
Yeah, GEO and MTC.
Yeah.
I think GEO took over MTC though. I'm not sure. They probably merged. I can't remember though.
Now, if you can't tell by looking at our apparel, like we are kind of on the left side of a lot of issues. Now, that's not saying like
we're not for crime.
We're not for crime. Yeah,
No.
we do think some of the laws in California are ridiculous and stuff like that.
I am 100% for. I wish they would release non-violent drug offenders that, have they even got to the point where they've released everyone who was just selling pot? I realize they can't sell it like on a mass scale, but they were supposed to be doing that, releasing any of them that were non-violent, but were dealing like marijuana.
Well, I don't know the answer to that question. I know that Texas passed probably 4 years ago a loophole for farmers that they could manufacture, grow crops that had THC in it. But they just this legislative session banned all THC products in Texas, and we're waiting to see if the governor's going to sign it. He's getting boatloads and boatloads of pressure from both sides,
I imagine,
to veto the bill. Here's where I come down on drug issues. There's some studies that show that probably 80% of all crime comes directly or indirectly from drugs or drug trade. And so, whether people are committing theft so they can get money to go buy drugs, or they're somewhere in the supply chain. So I probably come down a little bit harsher on drug crimes than y'all would, because I see that as a cause of a lot of the crime. We can agree on violent crime, but I think the lesson of we're no longer going to prosecute theft under $950. Any crime can have a devastating impact on society if it. Because here's the problem. Okay, so let me just say, when we enact policies like you're talking about to protect either the poor or nonviolent offenders, the people that step in and take advantage of that are gangs, career criminals, and organized crime. And so when we set up policies, which I would consider bad policies, that tie the hands of judges so that they cannot address those three groups, then that's bad. And those groups run amok, figure out ways to make a ton of money in that situation. And the best example of that is catalytic converter theft. We've pretty much decriminalized catalytic converter theft. We don't prosecute the people that steal those anymore. And organized crime has figured out, because you can make thousands of dollars off of one catalytic converter. And we've got this cottage industry, which is not cottage, it's organized. And we've got those groups making millions of dollars off of it because of a well-intended policy that has gone astray.
How does the Cadillac converter crime not qualify if those are over $950?
Well, I think we're talking, I'm using the example, well, we were talking about California, the Cadillac converter, I'm thinking of Harris County right now. And, we've got I mean, there's an example in from Facebook of some guys who were caught stealing Cadillac converters, and they were taking them to the jail. And the guys were like, "This isn't the way to the Harris County Jail," because they know they're not going to be prosecuted for Harris County. And the arresting officer said, "Oh, y'all wandered into Montgomery County, which is next door to Harris County, and we're taking you to the Montgomery County Jail, and here we prosecute for this crime."
Okay.
So,
I got another question on the $950 thing.
Yeah.
Are they maybe not wanting to prosecute cases like, how much does it cost, so to speak, like to prosecute a case or somebody? How much does all that cost? I mean, are they finding that it's like a waste of money? Anything under the $950, so they're kind of like, it's a waste of resources to do this? Is that maybe what it is? I always think that stuff comes down to money.
no, I think, okay, so what I think was happening was we've got these activist groups that were saying we should all have these soft on crime policies, and if we do these, let's do them in a Democrat stronghold, and then we'll show how well they work, and then we can take them nationwide, and we will be, we'll have this great reputation. So the problem is they took them and they were complete failures. They've been failures everywhere they've been tried, but the activists will not concede that they're not working. They just say, "Oh, we need more time." I mean, New York is another example where they've enacted some bad policies, and now we've had 3 different rollbacks of their bad bail reform policies, and probably we're going to have another one because it keeps returning as an issue because they're just doing window dressing to try to appease the public, trying to get more time to show that it works, and it hadn't worked yet.
But I heard a recent thing, like speaking of New York, I was listening to a news show and they were talking about how per capita, New York actually has less crime than Oklahoma City. Like Oklahoma City's like pretty dangerous lately.
I haven't seen that. I just know that, one of the reasons why the Republicans are in control of the House right now is because of New York, and because New York enacted what I would call bad bail reform. And as a result, in their congressional delegation, in the last couple of elections, they have turned from Democrat control to Republican control. And that was initially the reason why the Republicans took over the House.
You don't think it's inflation?
The governor of New York said, "We're going to have a third rollback of bail," and she demanded. And now she's probably going to be in a really tight race for re-election.
Didn't a lot of this so-called catch and release thing, though, start during like COVID because they didn't want to put everybody tightly packed into facilities?
Yeah.
So isn't that kind of how it started, was with that?
Well, I think it started before that, but we saw it on steroids. I like to say that all the different theories about bad bail reform that we've been hearing about for years during COVID, we put them in place, and we saw those reforms on steroids, and we saw what the impact of them was. And there's a DA from California, from Yolo County, and he did a study comparing people released on low-level offenders, people released on these catch and release policies versus someone released on a surety bond. And he found that the person who was just catch and release had a 200% greater chance of committing a violent offense in the next 18 months versus the person released on the surety bond. Those are stark, terrible, terrible comparisons.
Is that bill, like how you were saying that, or the policy, how you were calling it a soft on crime policy? Is that what it is actually named? Soft on crime? I've heard of tough on crime, but
this is a real organized situation. We've got the Soros groups that will recruit people to run for DA, and I would say they're recruiting soft on crime DAs, but let's just say DAs open to their policies. And so then once they're elected, they get sent to seminars, And those seminars give them, here's the policies that we want you to enact since we supported you. And I would call them soft on crime policies. We are no longer going to do drug enhancements. So a person who is a drug dealer is found with 20 pounds of methamphetamine will be treated the same as someone who just is a first-time drug user, because the enhancements are not sought. And you would agree, I think, that a drug dealer who is going to get 2 weeks in jail would see that as a cost of doing business instead of 20 years. And so I think these soft on crime policies, they're no longer going to seek more prison sentences. And I mean, it's just a long, long list of things that they will start enacting. And then there's a third group that will come in with pseudo studies, and I call them pseudo studies because I think they're cooking the books, that will say when you enact these policies, it won't increase crime. And then the third group tells them how to sell it to the public. That's what we've been going through. And Gascon was the poster child for these people, and we've seen. I would argue, and I don't think many people would disagree, that crime has been going up steadily since his policy. I mean, he was sued by his DAs on his policies as if they were violating state law, and they won several rounds of that. And so I would say the problem I have with these groups is I think that when you seek policy from activists, the activists will never admit they're wrong. They just want more time because they're raising money for that. And as politicians, the politicians should be seeking advice from all the activist groups and then doing what they think is proper. When they sell or they outsource these policies to them, it's a disaster. And that's what I think we've been through for the last 5 years in our urban areas.
Yeah, I think, I agree with you on the point. I think a lot of it is about money. I kind of feel that the way that they're trying to get, desperately trying to get the tax cuts for the billionaires, I believe that they operate like junkies. I mean, it's almost like they're scrambling around to try to find the money for that fix, so to speak. It reminds me of that. So, I agree with you that, but I think it's more of, probably like a disease where they need to have, I don't know if prison's the exact answer or if it's, they need treatment, some kind of treatment, Well, if we're going to be paying to house them anyways, I mean, either way, if they're going to be in prison, they're going to be paid for to be in there. It's why aren't we trying to help the situation?
Well, I think we are, and I think the way that we're trying to help the situation is we're using the hammer of the criminal justice system to give them an incentive to go to drug rehab. The problem with drug rehab is it has a 75% failure rate. So you have to have an incentive to go back over and over until the person decides on their own that they want to change. And so I think we have to have the hammer of the criminal justice system to give them the incentive. And quite frankly, if they don't want to go to drug rehab, I think they have that right. But then we have the right as a society to say, well, if you're not going to seek treatment, we don't want you to be free. I think that's perfectly fine in a society that wants public safety.
Yeah, I mean, I've known people who have gone to prison for selling drugs. One of my old friend's boyfriend, and he's like, I got more drugs in prison than I ever did out on the streets. When it was easier to get drugs in there. So I don't really see how it. I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm.
So what's the answer?
I guess I'm.
Delegalize. I mean, we legalize all hard drugs. I mean, isn't that what we just went through in Oregon, and that was a fiasco?
Yeah, well, I think that they learned, though, in Oregon that part of me kind of, I don't know if they went about it the right way, because part of me kind of agrees with that. I agree with there was I can't remember his name, but the old president of Mexico, when George W. Bush was our president, they were very good friends. And he went on a talk show and he was talking about that he is for the legalization of all drugs because you're never going to stop people from doing it. And if you at least legalize them, you take the power away from the cartels. Because as we all know, Mexico has a huge problem with the cartels.
Well, we've had an example of that in California that shows that that's even failed as well. So, we've legalized marijuana in California, and, with the open immigration policy from the last administration, we had cartels just moving their entire operations for the manufacture, the growing of marijuana into the United States and into California. And so the legal drug trade in California was failing. I mean, companies were filing bankruptcy because they were being taken over by the cartels. I found an article about that, and I posted it on Facebook right before the election, and it was deleted. I mean, it was censored. I had the author on that on my podcast, and there were sources that were censoring that. And then all of a sudden, Reagan, oh God, I'm so my age, Trump started talking about cartels and bringing their drug trade into the United States. So and since then, I've been able to share that article, and it hasn't been censored anymore. And I've talked to that author on our podcast. So I think that is naive to say that we can legalize drugs and then we'll be able to get rid of the cartels, because we already have an example in California where that didn't work. The legalized trade is going bankrupt and it's being taken over by the cartels.
I've never heard of the...
Okay, let's go to one point. Well, there's 2 points I want to make. One is isn't there a socio-economic factor that goes into that there's going to be more crime in the city because you have more people, lower paying jobs, and people get desperate to do things. Believe me, I don't like going into Las Vegas last week, and I had to get a bottle of shampoo, and it's locked up behind, you have to come and have someone, unlock to get a bottle of shampoo. I think that's ridiculous.
Pain in the ass.
Yeah, pain in the ass, But some of these policies that may be coming up in this big, beautiful bill, it seems like it may affect low-income areas, hence that you're going to get people more desperate, what could lead to more crime. It's this vicious cycle that we don't ever address.
And it almost seems like the people who make these bills don't really give a crap about us, because we're the ones that have to live amongst the people who are committing crime. They don't. They live in their mansions and whatnot. They're not going to be the ones suffering from the crimes. So sometimes I don't even think they care. They're like, Well,
I would say the big beautiful bill is an economic bill. It doesn't have anything to do with crime. But let me say a bit about your social issues or your comment that you made. In our urban areas, I would say Democrat parties have already failed families. I mean, we have no families, and we have people being born out of wedlock left and right. We've also, Democrat policies have destroyed schools. I mean, the dropout rates in our inner cities are huge. And then the drug problem is already really large. And then, we had some protests, some riots with the George Floyd thing where a lot of the inner cities were burned down and they did not get rebuilt. And so why not try something different? Those same groups have been telling us for the last 2 years, crime's not increasing. Just ignore what you think is happening. Crime's not increasing. Here's our pseudo studies saying that crime is not increasing. And you don't have to believe us. You can look at the FBI statistics. I wrote an article last October saying, here's all the reasons why you should question the accuracy of the FBI statistics. And then 10 days later, didn't have anything to do with my article, but the FBI statistics were updated and suddenly crime was shown to be increasing. It's still incomplete, but it suddenly was showing crime was increasing. So all of the things they've been saying for the last year or two was just wrong. And so why not try something different?
Or you could actually try going to places. I went to Minneapolis last year. The city's not burnt down. The city was great. I mean, that was where the George Floyd thing happened. And I realized there was the whole protest there. You had that guy he was from Texas, the one, because his ex-wife ratted him out and said, My ex-husband went there and purposely bashed in windows and whatnot. He ended up getting in trouble. They did try people who did vandalize in Minneapolis. And I mean, I know this is truth too because I did the same thing in my own state. I live in Arizona, decided I had time off from work because I had carpal tunnel surgery. So I wanted to go down to the border to see if what the news was telling me was the truth. And this was under Biden as president. The borders were dead. I even said I got pulled over 3 times by border agents. I got stopped 3 times and searched, and I'm like, I think you might be searching the wrong people. By the 3rd time, I was like, you guys want to search it? Go right ahead. And this will be the 3rd time today, but it's going to make for a great story. And, they did seem a little offended. They're like, well, they're getting in the places where there's the gaps. And I'm like, so why don't you just fix the gaps? I mean, because you go to the border, literally no one was coming across.
Oh.
So I tend to I have opinions about things, but I tend to not believe them, not unless I go see them with my own eyes. With the way our media is here in the United States, I just can't do it. I got to go I got to see it with my own eyeballs.
I guess in Texas, though, you know well about this issue too. But isn't by saying the open border policies, isn't this something? Now, here my take on open borders is if you're claiming open borders constantly in the media,
you're inviting them.
That sends a message to people like, oh, hey, the border's open. Let's go over.
The Coyotes are like, now's your chance, dude. Come on. Senator Ted Cruz is telling you they are wide open. This is your shining opportunity.
But the point being is, in Congress, they don't seem to want to write the bill to reform the immigration policies. Because we can't agree on it for whatever reason. Now, I don't think anybody wants people just pouring over here willy-nilly and stuff like that. And I think there was a lot of factors during the Biden administration why a lot of migrants were coming over on it. And did they not have the proper policies in place? Did they fumble this issue? Obviously, they fumbled the issue on it. But I think the bill that they did have this, Republicans and Democrats worked on a bipartisan bill that got killed by one of the presidential candidates because he wanted it to remain an issue on it. Now, I think we need a bipartisan bills to finally reform and it is a massive problem.
Got voted down. Yeah. We did have one.
Well, I think when you look at the history of the immigration issue, it goes back to Obama. Obama really was strong on the border until the last year of his office. And then he kind of flipped a switch and changed gears. And then for some reason, before Obama, we really didn't have this where the first year of a presidential after a presidential election was spent undoing everything that the previous president did as much as you can. And then starting with Obama, and then after that, every time we get a president from the other party, all you do is undo for the first year what the other party did. And I don't like that. I don't like that at all, but that's how extreme we are. The policies are they're not middle of the road anymore, so they go to the extremes. And so when a new party comes in, they want to undo them as much as possible. So when Biden came into office, the first thing he did, or a lot of the first things he did, was just to undo the Trump immigration policies on the border, like stay in Mexico and stuff like that. And I do believe that the impact of that was to open the borders. And then they created this app or used this app for a different purpose than what it was intended and started flying people into the country where they could just schedule on an app. And so the public didn't realize that those people were coming in. And that's not a myth. That's actually been detailed in articles about it. And so I don't think it's incorrect to say that we had wide open borders, that we had millions of people come in during the Biden White House or during his tenure. My question, though, is I do have a question about why. Why do we suddenly have to have a policy that was very open? Because you know during that time you saw the Texas governor busing people to other states, and that became a problem in New York. Mayor Adams saying we don't have the money to be housing these people, and you can like or dislike the person in head of ICE right now. His name's Holman, but he came out and said, do you know why they were housing people in hotels? Because if they were in an ICE facility, it cost a little bit over $100 a day, but they had to have a hearing within 30 days. If they were being housed in a hotel, then they could be kept for years without a hearing.
On that particular note, though,
I'm not questioning that.
Wasn't that hotel a hotel that was closed and not open to the public, and they used it because it was a facility?
But it still explains what's the advantage of having them in a hotel? I mean, a lot of places, like in, in other areas, they're using hotels that got completely, destroyed by people that were staying there for that time period. And so now they're going to have to be renovated substantially before they can be reopened to the public. So
But not really.
I don't understand why, but I don't agree that we needed a compromise bill to close the border. I think we didn't need a bill if the new president could come in and do it within 6 weeks. I have a hard time understanding what that bill would have done.
I agree with you on that one too, but mine's a little bit of a different take. I don't know why either side, the Republicans or the Democrats, cannot come up with a bill to penalize and go after employers that hire them. The only reason that they come here is for work to build a better life. If you go after the employers who are hiring illegal aliens, then you wouldn't have this problem. You really wouldn't. That would solve it. Start throwing their asses in jail.
I think that would solve some of it, but I think what we don't realize is the human trafficking is such a large part of the crossing over the border now is because the cartels have learned that humans are more valuable than drugs. And if they get caught moving drugs, they lose the drugs. But if they get caught moving people and they're over the border, the people get to stay. And, if they are financing to get them here and they have to do all kinds of human trafficking type things to pay them back, then I don't know if like an E-Verify bill would address that situation.
We probably have to go after the rich then, because aren't they the only people who can afford humans?
Well, I'm talking about, they're getting them here for prostitution stuff and stuff like that. And so I don't think it's, people buying slaves and stuff.
No, but but they're buying like sex slaves. They're...
I don't know. Look, I don't live in that world. I don't want everyone to live in that world. And so I'm glad that I have never had or had anybody in my family that does. But I do think that one of the benefits of closing the border is the attacks on the cartels. The cartels are not making as much money as they were. And, I was critical of the policies that allow those drugs to come in. And again, it was an example like in our criminal justice system, these bad bail reforms. We're doing policies that may have been well intended, but they were tying the hands of law enforcement so they couldn't address cartels. It's just like we're tying the hands of judges in the name of addressing the poor, but we're keeping them from addressing gangs, cartels, and career criminals. I think it's the same thing on immigration policy. And I think that the change to the new administration has been very positive for immigration policy.
Okay, but on that note in particular, there's a big debate about habeas corpus and getting rid of due process and like sending people to El Salvador without due process.
And they're not from El Salvador.
Now, I know this is a touchy subject on it, and I don't think that we're all that far off on what we believe, but you have to have due process, especially in your business. Don't your business relies on due process ultimately.
But the due process that applies, there's different levels depending on your status. Like, okay, so the lowest level of due process applies to a person who is here illegally and already has been through the system and is subject to a deportation order. So the courts have said that for those people, which a lot of the El Salvadorians that we're hearing in the press about all the things that are wrong, they haven't had due process. The only due process that you're eligible for in that situation is a writ of habeas corpus to say, I'm not this person, because you've already received the due process. The longer you're here, the more due process you get. And then the most due process would be a citizen who cannot be removed. You can't deport a citizen because they can't be deported. They are citizens. And so, but when we go to, you've been here 2 years, you've got a green card, you have a right to more due process. But it's not due process versus no due process. There are levels of it, and that's what's not being reported.
Isn't it, though, in the Constitution, though, that any person has the right to that?
It doesn't say citizen. It says...
Yeah, but they've already received due process. They've already been through the court system. This guy that we've heard all this news about, he's already was subject to deportation, a deportation order that had been appealed and affirmed.
I got a really good question on this, then. If he already got due process and went through that and possibly served his time, then, because that's what I've heard is like if someone who is illegally in this country commits a crime, they get tried, they still go and serve their time, and then when they're done serving their time, then they get deported.
Yes, Ben. That would be what would happen for violent offenders. I mean, So the law enforcement could decide at the time of arrest, are we going to take you to jail or are we just going to deport you? In the criminal justice system, I think a lot of what people don't realize is, if we give someone a personal bond, they get arrested, they're here illegally, you give them a bond, and they get out of jail. A lot of times there's a hold on them from ICE. Or if it's a bad enough offense where they're looking for substantial time, they'll get out and they'll just run to Mexico. So that's a really complicated issue. So we have to decide when they get arrested, is this somebody that we want as a society to try, make them to pay for their pay a penalty of serving time, and then after they're released, get deported, or do we want to deport them at the beginning of the criminal proceedings?
If these ICE agents are doing everything they're supposed to be doing, then why are they wearing masks? What?
They're wearing masks.
Why are they hiding?
The Democrats are doxing them, and they're which is posting their home address online, and they're getting death threats, and their families are receiving threats. So they're being told by ICE that they need to cover up their identity to protect their families. And I mean,
then why don't they have like a badge number that?
Live in a place that would do that.
Yeah, even police officers have to give their badge numbers and whatnot. Like, this is... Then if they have such a problem with that, they need to go find a new job. That's my opinion. I mean, you got in this, you should be proud of yourselves for doing that.
But that's a tactic on the opposite side. I mean, that's just a tactic. It's like, we want to keep you from doing your job.
I'm not saying that... I've never heard of anyone threatening them.
If you don't like it, go get a new job. I think if they're doing doxing and they're doing it improperly, they need to be arrested and charged with the crimes for doing that. That's what will stop it. Not telling the ICE officer he just needs to go find another job.
Well, I don't think he's strong enough for the job. I don't think he's mentally strong enough for the job. I mean, some jobs have that happen. That's a part of the job. I mean, I hate to say it, but
well, with respect, I don't think that's right. I don't think that as a society that's proper, and we shouldn't sanction that. And it should be a crime.
We shouldn't sanction people unidentified just grabbing people on the street.
I don't think it's right for them to have broken into that woman's house in Oklahoma and ripped her kids out in the street when they're legally allowed to be here.
Under a deportation order, that they've already received their due process. The only habeas corpus they're entitled to is one to say they're not that person. So, I mean, I understand. Oh, well, we're picking people.
So harass them and then ask questions later?
Who've already been through the justice system for immigration, and they've been ordered to leave the country and haven't.
So on that note, though, ICE is only rounding up those people who have been determined that they're...
No, they're not.
Well, no, I would say, the ICE has said when we have to go and when we're going to sanctuary cities where they're not cooperating with us, and so we're not able to arrest somebody in a place like in a courthouse where it's the safest place for the public to arrest somebody, then we have to go out in the community. And if we find them there and we find others with them, and we will look at their immigration status, and if they're here illegally, we will take them in as well, because that's our job. If we have to go find somebody, we look at the other people with them, and if they're here illegally, we have to take them in. I mean, I don't see a problem.
They've already detained a mayor.
Well,
remember they detained like the mayor from New Jersey or something.
I mean, it's like you said, it's a complicated issue on it, and I'm sure there's just a lot of gray area. It seems like on this issue.
In some ways, we're repeating the same errors or mistakes that we've done before in the '60s, and I think you could say that about immigration policy as well. But let's just say for criminal justice, in the '60s we felt safe, so we were more forgiving on our criminal laws, and then over time, crime started increasing. We couldn't get an agreement between the two parties on how to address it. One party refused to participate, so we ended up with a backlash, and I would argue that's why we got Reagan with his war on drugs. So I would say that we just finished an election where part of the backlash we just had again, because
that was
we were more forgiving on our criminal laws. We had crime increasing, and we have a backlash. We probably would have had the backlash 2 years earlier, but one of the reasons why Trump was elected was because of increasing crime, also the immigration policy.
No, Trump got elected because of the price of eggs.
Well, yeah, I mean, you had inflation.
It's usually inflation, which, if you look back in history, that's why Jimmy Carter lost too. Well, that and the whole Iran-Contra deal.
Jimmy Carter was elected, but also, that was what brought us Reagan and his war on drugs.
Well, no, it was Nixon that did the war on drugs. There's a documentary about it on America the Last.
Reagan.
Huh?
Remember, Reagan did too.
He did just say no, but the war on drugs actually started under Richard Nixon.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah.
I mean, these are all tough issues, and
well, the issue is, where do we find? The problem is, where do we find the sweet spot? A sweet spot of being forgiving and still having public safety. And on the border, where's the sweet spot on being welcoming to people who want to do a better life, and also having public safety? I have never heard anyone argue until Trump that Venezuela was emptying their prisons and sending them to America. But the problem is, I don't think anybody really disputes now that was happening. And if we assume, let's just assume for a moment, let's don't say whether it's true or not, but let's assume that it did happen. That's not a group that we want to welcome into our country. And
no, of course
policies that address that, but still keeps us welcoming to people who want to make a better life.
Right, and wouldn't that be in an immigration bill that you could address this stuff with bipartisan efforts? That we can be...
Well, wouldn't the people already... Wouldn't one response be we already have a system to get to the country legally, and you need to go through that system?
But that's flawed. It's obviously flawed, because it's not a crime to come to the border and seek asylum. You come to the border, you seek asylum, and then you're free to go until your court date, right? Mm-hmm. Which is a failed system because of the backlog that you're talking about. So yeah, there has to be some kind of reform. Or we can say, hey, we're just going to pause this for a year, or we're going to just, till we get caught up, you're going to remain in Mexico, or whatever it is. I just think that we could come up with something that is tough on crime. Asylum seekers could come here. Mm-hmm. And we don't have to have the cruelty of some of the stuff that's going on with ICE. I think that could happen.
My oldest daughter is dating a young man who immigrated from Colombia when he was 10. He and his whole family. and they came here legally. They had a sponsor, so they came under the existing system, and they didn't even speak English when they came. And he is been through the education system. He's graduated from college. He has 2 degrees, business and something else. And I mean, there's an example of a family that has gone through the system and to get a better life, and they've done it. I mean, congratulations to them.
Exactly. But Trump's policy is going to keep people like that out.
If you want to come, why don't you come that way? Why do you have to?
Yeah, but with the way that Trump's handling it, we're going to keep people like that out now, because people who want to do it the way that your daughter's boyfriend did it, like
closing the border doesn't keep those people from coming in. Someone has to sponsor them, and they had somebody that sponsored them and brought them into the country. What Trump is doing doesn't stop that. I mean, that's
so. There's still people coming in right now. There's still people coming to the border and coming in.
Well, I mean, coming to the border is. I mean, you get a sponsor, and I think you come to the country. I mean, I think that that's what a green card is, or a visa. A lot of people that come to the country now is because they're relatives of others who are here. So I'm not sure. I'm not an expert in what is the legal immigration policy.
Well, I mean, they're already going
after.
after.
Go to your consulate or the U.S. consulate and apply for a visa to come into the country.
Well, they're doing the whole thing now, like with the colleges, where they don't want the foreign students coming here. Like they don't, like.
Well, you're talking about Harvard, though.
Well, yeah, but isn't he trying to do the thing where he?
The Secretary of State has said, if you're going to come here and create problems, we don't want you here, and we're going to revoke your visa.
But
they're not.
But
the students aren't doing that.
But then that gets into, again, this is really complicated.
And you have a right to protest.
You don't want you don't want what's happening in Boulder, Colorado, what happened there. But if someone wants to speak up pro-Palestinian and writes a thesis about it, and then they throw her, just for that opinion, again, it's complicated, and
it's very complicated. But here's the problem: when you have, I mean, this is where I come from, because we're from Texas. So under the Biden administration, Texas was under the belief that the federal government was not enforcing border policy. So Texas spent $9 billion to attempt to enforce the border policy itself. And,
razor wire.
Since I live in Texas, one of the things I saw was right before the election, before Biden dropped out, he was claiming this great reduction in people crossing the border, and really all he was doing was claiming the success that Texas was doing in spite of him, because he refused to do anything. And he was claiming the great success of what Texas was doing as the federal government success. And that was absolutely not true. I lived through that. I mean, we're here in Texas. We spent $9 billion of Texas money to do the job he refused to do. And, I think the lesson from the election is, being president, you set a lot of policy, and immigration and visas are 2 of them. And we cannot like it, we can disagree with it, but when we have groups, when we have the president in office and they're governing from the extremes, then all we get are the extremes. We need to when we got rid of the filibuster in the Senate, we have more extreme actions being taken. We need like a return of the filibuster, because it forces compromise.
Right. Yeah, more bipartisan.
Right now to force compromise, so we're getting the extremes, and so the left's not happy when a Republican's in office, or the right's not happy when a Democrat's in office, and that's where we are right now. We've got to stop that. We got to take politics out of these issues, because it hurts so many people.
I got an idea. Why don't they just find that old bill, that old piece of paper that they wanted to pass for and then Trump was like,
well, you could modify it.
Don't do it till I get elected. And fine, pass it now. Let him have the credit. I mean, his ego needs it. Yeah, let him have the credit, and then we should be moving on to better things.
That bill's not going to pass under the current administration, and the reason why is because it was a bill that had very minimal Republican support, 4 or 5 or 6, so just enough so that they could claim it was bipartisan. But now the Republicans are in charge. They're not going to propose a bill like that was proposed, because it had a lot of. I mean, it was mostly window dressing from.
Then they don't really care. Then they don't care. They want the cheaper labor too. I mean, I'm convinced of that. I'm convinced they just don't want to pay people. They don't want to pay. They like being able to get away with paying the lower wages. That's the goal. You make more money that way.
Again,
that's how business works.
This is complicated. Then write a new bill, I guess.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I mean, do something then.
And you know what? This is nothing that we're going to solve. You're not going to solve it. I'm not going to solve it. Snow's not going to solve it. And we're getting short on time here. So let's give you some plugs here. We thank you for having this conversation on. And just because we don't agree, I think these are conversations that need to be had. And but that's what does not happen. You either listen to this news outlet or this news outlet, and you don't come and you don't have these conversations where you try to gain understanding. And I think that's important. And we're glad you came on and give us your point of view.
I think if people want more information about me or our organization, they can go to pbtx.com. PBTX stands for the Professional Bondsmen of Texas. We have a blog where we highlight criminal justice issues from probably a conservative perspective, but from a what works, what doesn't work perspective. We also have our own podcast. There's a link on our menu, but you can also go to thebellpost.com, where all we do is talk about criminal justice issues. And if you want to know what the New Jersey plan is, we have an episode about it. We'll be doing a series of episodes over the next few weeks or months talking about all the bills that passed in Texas on bail reform and what they do. And so, one of the things that, I think about on these issues is, we talk about what works and what doesn't work, but it seems like we've gotten our urban cities where it's a one-party rule. And so we have a Democrat in office, and then they get him removed, and they replace him with another Democrat. What I would challenge people to say is, if something's not working and it hasn't been working in your area for 20 years, try something new.
Amen. They should do that in rural America too, because rural America, it's always like red, and you can never, like where we live, it is, there are no Democrats.
But there's not a run-of-muck crime in our urban cities. They're still doing the procedures that we teach in our criminology classes. But they're not doing this mumbo-jumbo pseudoscience that we're doing.
Our crime is up here, though. Like we've got shootouts that are happening here, and all kinds of crazy stuff.
Like Bakersfield, California, which has a red mayor, blue state, red mayor, but the crime rate per capita is higher than San Francisco.
Kevin McCarthy was their representative.
I guess there's serious reform. Is the point I'm trying to get. There's serious reforms that need to be done. That we need to do bipartisan work together, and it can't just be like, well, it's the left's fault, it's the right's fault, and never come to any compromise.
It's really bad right now because they've got a governor on criminal justice reform. They're refusing to add additional capacity to their prison system. So every bill that gets passed is really intended to reduce the prison population, irrespective of whether it creates more crime. And we don't have those discussions because nobody wants to talk about the bigger issue. The last governor of California that set aside money to build prisons was Arnold Schwarzenegger, and it didn't get done.
Yeah, but in all fairness, though, to Gavin Newsom, he is becoming more, you guys should start liking him a little bit more. He's becoming more moderate, or he's like having Steve Bannon on and stuff like that. Like,
I would agree. He will never rehabilitate himself, and anything that he does, I think he's hurt himself, even with his own party right now. Trying to.
I don't think he'll ever win the presidency. I think that might be one of his goals, but the fact alone that he is from the state of California, every other state in the United States that isn't California has a real problem with California. There's the Democrats. As a Democrat, I don't want them to run him.
Yeah, and
not at all.
And from Arizona, given policy-wise, and things are expensive in California. California's a pretty cool state.
Well, but California.
They got the best weather.
Presidential election, they're going on the Democrat side. There's going to be all-out war, and one of the things that we're going to be seeing is to play out is this Biden mental state and what you knew and when you knew. And so, if you were in the Biden administration, I think that's going to hurt your chances to be a candidate for president because you're going to be questioned, what did you know, when did you know? So Gavin Newsom does have the advantage of not coming from the Biden administration, although he did spend a lot of time with him, so he's going to have a lot of those questions. But, I mean, Harris is going to be probably fatal to that. The Transportation Secretary, Pete Buttigieg, is trying to raise his profile. He's going to have issues with that. I think you're going to see, we've seen stuff like that happen before where an issue becomes almost a disqualifier for someone running for president, like in the Democrats over the Iraq war. If you voted for
that's why my horse is going to be from Kentucky, Andy Beshear.
So, yeah,
yes.
It could be somebody we don't know. That's really how we got Clinton, Bill Clinton the first time.
Our first choice would actually be for somebody from Texas.
Oh yeah,
Jasmine Crockett.
I'm
not sure. We don't have to get into that. We don't have to get into that.
That's a joke, I hope, because I hope. Hey, nominate her.
I like somebody that is gonna talk back. Like I'm tired of all the stuff that the left has to take from the right. At least we have somebody that stands up against them, unlike Chuck Schumer, who just sits there and, whatever the hell he's saying, I don't know.
But isn't the criticism of Schumer, is he moderated and compromised on something, and the Jasmine and the AOCs of the world are killing because he compromised? Isn't that what we just talked about? We need more compromise, but it's not that compromise.
Hey, you guys have your own problems. Look at your MTGs and your Lauren Boeberts, okay? It's the same thing.
I would argue that's the reason why we have Trump. We have Trump because the Republicans got tired of their candidates not responding to Democrats and just.
Okay, well we're the same way though. Like we're tired of our side trying to be Mr. Nice Liberal all the time. Like I'm done with that.
Where's that happening? I don't think Schumer's being nice liberal.
Yeah, he did. He went along with some of his stuff. They went along with him and 10 other senators decided to go along with something.
Yeah, but
I forget what the bill
was.
was.
To shut down the government, and he recognized that he was not the party in the majority. Jasmine Crockett would have shut down the government. What
they should have let the Republic. I have said this from the election. I'm like, look, Democrats, we lost. Exactly what the Republicans and MAGA tell us. You lost. Get over it. We lost. We lost the presidency, we lost the House, we lost the Senate. So let the Republicans own everything that's going to happen. Because I'm tired of the ping pong back and forth every 4 years. Let them own it and let them own it good. They need to, people need to lose things in order to finally learn.
I think what you don't realize is the politics are so bad right now. I think a lot of this responding and misrepresenting is to try to prevent Trump from catching a wave. I would argue that he is such a TV, he knows how to sell things, that if we didn't have all this commentary that's
very
not correct, that's made up
salesman.
stuff, he would potentially have, sky high. He would be a transformative president like we've not seen since, the people that are on the rocks, like Theodore Roosevelt. And I think a lot of what you're seeing on the responses to him is to try to prevent him from being that kind of transformative president. I think all the stuff going on in the courts, probably 9 out of 10 of those are, we know we're not going to win, we're just trying to delay. Because when he took office, he had 4 years. Now he's got 3 years and 11 months, 3 years and 10 months. So anything they can delay it till the next Democrat gets in his office, that's what.
But that was Mitch McConnell's whole MO when Obama was president: delay. Again, this is a problem with both sides on it.
Yeah,
you guys have the numbers to pass whatever you want, though. That's the thing. You have the numbers, so you don't. The right doesn't get to blame the left. Those days are over this election cycle. If you guys can't do your job, then you failed.
There's not 60 seats in the Senate, so they still need, on almost all issues, they have to have support from the Democrats to pass bills in the Senate.
They don't need them not on every issue. It depends on what the issue is.
Not in the reconciliation bill, they won't.
Yeah, they're not going to need it for the.
$60 on that.
They're not going to need it for the big beautiful bill though, or else we'd already know that it wasn't going to pass. If that passes, the Republicans are going to have to own it. I mean, I don't know what else to say.
Yeah, but that's their intention. Their intention is to own it.
Well, then, good luck in 2026. I mean, that's what's going to happen. I mean,
Well, again,
no,
we'll
everything's
just-
focused on the next election, next year's election for the House. Everything I see says the Democrats are guaranteed to take over the House. I think that's looking at history, not this section.
because he already can't do his job. I mean, he's already just showing that all he's focused on is those tax cuts. He is like one of the junkies we were talking about earlier. They all are. They are scrambling for that fix.
Cuts. All he's doing is re-upping the ones that are already in effect.
continuing.
He's stealing from people to get what he wants. He's stealing from others. He's doing the same. It's all the same mental illness. It's all like falls under hoarding and all that. It's the same thing. It's he's not better because he has more money. You know, it's just they all have the same disease.
Well, I don't know
It's
if I agree with
unfortunate.
that, but I appreciate your
Well,
It's
I mean,
unfortunate.
obviously, we'll have to agree to disagree.
Yeah.
But you have a book out, right, Ken?
Well, I have a book on bail, but it's called Goods on Bail. It's a practice guide for people in the Texas industry. But yeah.
Do you have a bail
It's been out
business?
for a long time. What?
Do you
bail
do you
business?
have
No,
a
I
bail
don't write
business?
And I represent surety companies.
Okay.
Oh,
I'm an
okay.
attorney, not a bondsman.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I thought maybe you were like you owned a bail business, a bail bondsman business. Okay.
No.
Okay.
I wish
Well,
I did.
well,
Oh.
hey,
I work so hard.
well, hey, we appreciate you having on, and and I know that we're kind of running a little bit
Well,
longer
what I
here.
mean by that would be traveling the state representing bondsmen. I just have my office, so. But yes.
All right, Ken.
Well,
Ken.
thank
Well,
you so
this.
much for having me on your show.
Well,
and
Yeah,
Well, thank
thanks
you.
for coming on.
Saturday.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
We
do
appreciate
that.
we like to talk to the other side. I mean, most people try to avoid it. We like to talk to the other side. So thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you, guys. We'll talk to
Okay.
you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Ooh, that was good cop bad cop right there.
Stopped.
I couldn't take it. I couldn't take it because I'm like, once he started saying some of the stuff, I'm like, he is fucking going off conspiracies, dude. The one thing he said, I'm like, when he's like, and then they censor